Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of Ask an OpenShift Admin. I am Chris Short, executive producer, host with the most, whatever you want to call me. I am the thing that runs the OpenShift TV project, whatever you want to call it. It is an awesome thing, and I am joined by the wonderful Andrew Sullivan. And Andrew, what are we talking about today, buddy? I feel like there's some cool things coming out.
What wonderful, Andrew Sullivan. Apparently I forgot to put your check in the mail there.
Yeah, no, you are quite wonderful.
So I can tell it's been one of those days when you, like, as you're introducing yourself, you're pausing and doing an like you're just. It's been one of those days. It's a Wednesday, right?
It's been a week. Let's just put it like that.
Hey, I was on PTO last week, so apologies for anybody who was expecting a live stream last week, last Wednesday at this time. I was on PTO enjoying some relaxation, some time before,
which you fully deserve. Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, it was my kids. So we do year-round school here. I'm just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. So we do year-round school. So my kids basically had the week of, like, the last week of June, and then the first half of last week off.
Right.
And that was when they rolled between grades. So my oldest is now in 8th grade. And it's also,
I never understood the whole year-round school thing in Raleigh. So yeah, anyways,
it's a little different. I like the year-round, but so yeah. And then they're back in the classroom, which is super weird. You and I were talking about this before we started, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time I've been in an empty house for a stream in 18 months. Like, since before we started streaming.
Wow.
So
yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Like, wasn't it a phone call between you and Chris that started all this nonsense? Like at the beginning of the now times?
I guess, yeah. We were talking about how do we, in the time of everything being canceled. This was last March.
Yeah, March.
So it was right as everything was being canceled and all of that. How can we continue to connect with folks? How can we? And my thought was, if we're not going to do conferences, how do we offer people the ability to have that same sort of experience of, I'm going to walk into a booth, I'm going to find somebody, and I have a question I want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And those questions, as you and I both, we've worked hundreds of booths for, probably thousands of hours at this point.
Yeah.
Those questions can be anything from, I have the support case, can you help me with the support case? To, like, what does this mean? How does this work? Or what's your opinion on this? Or, hey, did you hear that your competitor did this? Right. And so how do we offer that same experience? And it just so happened that my son was asking about, he wanted to be a YouTuber and a Twitch streamer at the time. And that I brought it up with our manager, right, with Chris, and he ran with it, and it turned into what you all have done today. Yeah.
It's so I was just talking to Langdon about it, right? Like, look at how far we've come, kind of thing. It was pretty awesome to, like, look back. I wish I would have done a better job of, like, documenting some of those historical things, right? Because there have been some, like, step ups, right? Like, we have what we call graduated shows now, and the whole 9 yards. Like this would have made a great, like, story or some. And at some point, we will have a how do we do things here on OpenShift TV, but that's not the point of this show.
Yeah, and today, me, I've advocated for that show of the behind the scenes, a day in the life of Chris Short. Which is not.
I need to get, like, a drone or something just floating over my head at all times.
All right, so I know we've kind of dilly-dallied and small talked here for a couple of minutes. So circling back around to your original question, so I'm doing great, and two, as the title of the show indicates, we are talking about OpenShift 4.8.
Yeah,
and specifically because this is the Ask an OpenShift Admin live stream, that means that we are going to be focused on sort of the administrator-centric or things that are relevant for administrators.
Mm-hmm.
So
got to talk to our ops folks, y'all.
Yeah, and so it's funny because
if you're just the dev with the OpenShift cluster credentials, right? Like,
which might be a little scary.
Yeah.
So originally, This show was scheduled to be after the 4.8 G day. So
Originally.
late, yeah.
Yes.
So very late in the process, they found an issue, which caused them to delay out the 4.8 GA.
Yep.
So we're pressing ahead. You'll see. I'm going to show a cluster in a few minutes. It says 4.8.0. It doesn't say RC or anything like that. Anybody can go and get those bits, and you can look at it, but it is not officially GA yet. So
yes. So
I
again,
know.
let me flash the.
Yeah,
what we're talking about is in the future, even though it might only be a couple weeks away.
Yeah. So I want, and the reason why I'm saying this is because 2 weeks ago we had the What's New in 4.8 live stream, right, where
Yes.
product management went through into all of this, and that's kind of the basis for this show.
Mhm.
A week after that, so last week we had all of the PR go out. So if you were looking at redhat.com or OpenShift.com, right, or whatever the news release thing that we have is, right,
Press.OpenShift.com, yeah.
So
Or Red Hat, yeah.
you saw all of the announcements. We've had a bunch of social media about it and all this other stuff. So I would understand if you thought that it was already generally available. It is not, but it will be very, very soon.
Yes. So we understand your confusion. We understand, there is a lot of content that is out there about 4.8 and it's not out yet. We get that.
Yep. And there will be more.
Yes.
So yes, as we go to GA, you will see a huge number of blog posts drop over a very short period of time, talking about individual features and capabilities, and lots of other stuff inside of there. So it's turned from what was going to be like a 2-week thing into several weeks longer than that. But just be aware, not GA yet. Will be GA soon. Sorry for the confusion.
Yep.
Okay.
First question du jour.
Okay.
I want to configure Thanos, object store config, and receivers. Is that possible on OCP 4.8?
Yes.
Yes, it is. I think it's possible right now in 4.7. Is it
Correct?
not? Yeah.
Yeah. So and ACM will automatically do that,
Right.
as will if you enable. So if you enable the user project or user namespace, user application monitoring. I'm trying to think of the right word here. That'll automatically deploy. Yeah. So that'll automatically deploy all of the Thanos components so that it can query both instances of Prometheus. So if you aren't aware, in the default configuration, right, when you install out of the box OpenShift, it has the kind of core system Prometheus, right? So there's a Prometheus instance that scrapes and collects and displays back all of the metrics and all the information about OpenShift itself. But it doesn't deploy, and you cannot use that Prometheus for user workload monitoring for your applications. So there's a config file and operator. You go in and you say turn it on. It will deploy a whole second instance of Prometheus and then configure Thanos and all of those things so that you can query across both of those at the same time. User workload monitoring. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Whoever said that, thank you. Sorry.
So yeah, yes, it's possible. You can also deploy, and if you're using ACM will aggregate all of that information up as well using Thanos, so that way you can query across all of those instances, and you can deploy it manually, of course. We talked about that in the monitoring episode, which was 3 episodes ago. Yeah, something like that. I'll dig up the link, and it'll definitely be in the show notes.
Yes. Which, if you're not familiar with this show, go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see. Find the right. Where's the right window? You are the right window. Yes, that's the right window. So speaking of which, just to show you an example, this is openshift.com/blog. You'll see that after every episode that we do, so the following Friday morning, we will publish a blog post that has a link to the stream, as well as we go through and we cover all of the things that we talked about with links directly to those. So, here, this is the authentication authorization show, right? Hey, did you know you can assign permissions before the user can exist? And you click that link and it jumps to precisely where we're talking about that. So keep an eye on openshift.com/blog for all of those. You can also, as a little cheat, they all get lumped into this OpenShift.tv category. So if you look at that category, at that tag up here,
nice,
you can see all of those blog posts. And
I did not realize that Alex had a whole tag for us.
Yeah, so I'll put a link to that in the chat. But yeah, you can see all of these. You can see it's mostly mine, but there's a few others in there. Here's one of Christian's GitOps Guide to the Galaxies. So here's the one that you and Chris Morgan did on the launch of
It's been a
OpenShift.tv.
year.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The whole 9 yards. Yeah.
So yeah, a little cheat if you're looking for all the blog posts that come out of these live streams.
Nice.
So
I need to make that the blog landing point as opposed to, but anyways,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Kind of moving on with our, in tradition for this show. So the Ask an OpenShift Admin office hour is an office hour show. What that means is that we are here to answer your questions. This is meant to be quite literally an ask us anything type of show. So whatever it is that is top of your mind, you are more than welcome to ask us in chat, and we will address that to the best of our ability. And that may mean that today, right now, right here, we'll say, well, we think it's this, but we're not sure. Or
Right.
sometimes we've also outright said, I don't know.
Reggie, we'll have to get back to you on that one. Yeah.
And yeah, we'll chase down those answers, and we'll put them either in the blog post or we'll have a follow-up. We'll talk about it in a follow-up episode as well. So doesn't matter what's on your mind. Feel free to ask away in the chat. Whatever platform you're watching on, it gets rebroadcast to all of the others. So we'll be sure to pick that up. And we're happy to answer that. In the absence of those questions, or in addition to those questions, we also have a topic that we like to talk about, right? I said before, today we're talking about 4.8. And I also have, it's not really a segment or anything like that. I also like to talk about at the beginning of each episode, kind of the things that are top of mind for me. So things that have come up in the last week or two, right? However long it's been since the last stream, that I see as either reoccurring issues, potential issues, or information, right? Things that are pertinent to you all as OpenShift administrators. So with that in mind, the first one of those that I want to talk about, let me find my cheat sheet here. OpenShift on ARM.
Yes.
So
I am so stoked for this.
Yeah. So if we look right here, OpenShift on ARM developer preview. So absolutely today you can go to, and actually I'll bring it up. We can go to cloud.redhat.com/OpenShift. We can click on create cluster here, and down at the bottom, we have this AWS ARM. So if you have ARM-based workloads, ARM-based applications, you want to start trying those out in AWS, there you go. You can deploy a fully ARM-based OpenShift cluster. So that makes the fourth architecture.
I can't wait until this is like GA across the board, right? Like there's so much stuff you can do with ARM that is just possible because of ARM's like low energy footprint, low, resource utilization, that kind of thing. And it's just an amazing platform. And like, I love ARM more than probably any other processor architecture out there. I know that sounds like a weird thing to love, but I am a nerd at heart. So yeah. When I think it was Cloudflare, they had a rack of their Intel servers and a rack of new ARM-based servers that they were testing out, and they put one of those like power meters in line for the rack, and it was like a third of the power being consumed, but twice the compute power, I think is what they said. It's like, this is insane.
Yeah, it's as somebody who uses an M1 Mac every day, that's
I've got an M1
my
iPad.
daily driver.
It's shockingly fast at everything it does. Yeah.
So before anybody asks, so this is specifically, ARM on Amazon, right? It is not Raspberry Pi. It is not.
You're not going to be able to
Apple Silicon, right?
Yeah, it's not going to run on an M1. It's not going to run on an ARM. ARM is, or not ARM, Pi's, because that ARM architecture is actually different than the Graviton. I don't know, whatever they call it.
It also doesn't have enough resources. Even the largest
even
Pi 4,
the biggest Pi 4 with PCIe on it, whatever you want to do, still not strong enough to run etcd.
Yeah. So it has been asked about and inquired about many times internally, but no, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, no OpenShift on Raspberry Pi today.
Not today, no.
So yeah, definitely interesting if you are running those ARM workloads. If you're interested in the low energy, I think they're also slightly cheaper instances inside of AWS.
They are way cheaper.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't keep up with AWS pricing. I have an engineering account, so I use AWS, and I don't know.
You are one of those lucky few, I guess.
Yeah.
You have what we call cloud privilege.
Yeah, I very much so. It's when I used to work for a storage vendor, right? And people would ask me, I'd go visit customers. Oh, how much does it cost for, Model X? Well, I don't know. It's all free to me. I just put in a request and it shows up. So yeah, I definitely have that issue. Anyways, so moving on. So OpenShift on ARM, definitely a thing. Check out the blog posts. They walk you through how to get started, how to use all of that stuff, including down here at the bottom, you see list of known issues. Check out the README and the OpenShift on ARM issue tracker. So it is tech preview or dev preview. I don't remember which, but either one means that it is not supported today. But that doesn't mean that you can't open issues and stuff like that. So you see we have this. If I click on that, it goes to OCP on ARM. You can absolutely open issues inside of here if you have problems. And engineering, it's best effort type of thing, right? They'll do their best to help, but it is not an officially supported offering.
Right.
So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, I already kind of touched on this by showing you this interface. So I very rarely go to cloud.redhat.com, just like the base level cloud.redhat.com.
You and I were talking about this. We normally have multiple layers of depth that we dive into first. Yeah.
So if you haven't been here in a while, like I hadn't, it's been redesigned a little bit. And specifically, if we go into the OpenShift tab here, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening. One of my favorites here is this downloads tab. So now I can click, basically in one link, I have, quick links to all of the downloads. So here's the OC interface, there's ODO, here's OpenShift install, right? Direct links to all of those things, as well as your pull secret down here. So I find this much easier. Previously you'd have to go to clusters and then you'd have to go to create cluster. And then you'd have to go to I want to deploy to Rev. And now I want to do IPI. And here, now finally I can get the installer. So clicking on that downloads link, much, much easier. The other thing that I really like is this releases tab. This, in my opinion, is amazing. Right? It tells you precisely what are the available releases right now and what their lifecycle stage is. So I can see right now, OpenShift 4.5.41 is the current release. It is currently under maintenance support. Note that when 4.8 goes GA, 4.5 will go into end of life. It will no longer be supported. So I find this to be, really helpful for helping me gauge what's the current release, which one should I be on. So here, that one's all 4.5.41, but you see here how we have multiple releases depending on which stage it's in. So stable and EUS are the same. Candidate, which remember, candidate is not a supported channel. Candidate is at 4.6.39. Fast is 4.6.38. So on and so forth. So check out cloud.redhat.com/OpenShift if you haven't recently. You can see all kinds of stuff inside of here. Right?
Gotten some new features and functions. Go check it out.
Yep. If you haven't, and I don't have, this is my developer account. I don't have anything associated with it. But if you haven't seen all the subscription information in here, and Chris, our team has a monthly meeting with the UX team, and they showed us some of this stuff around making it easier to see both individual and your aggregated subscription consumption all through this interface. So very, very cool stuff that they're doing inside of here. Our
UX and UI team are making a very conscious effort to make this better, right? Like they check with us before they release features, right? Like that is something I've never experienced at a company before. I think it's wonderful that we do that.
And to their credit, they take everything that we say very seriously. And I give them every opportunity of no, Andrew's full of crap. Andrew doesn't know what he's talking about. You shouldn't listen to Andrew. And they do take us very seriously. So I appreciate that.
No, we are users of the product as well. So it's good that they get our input.
So while I'm on the subject here of releases, so you'll see out here that 4.5.41 is the current 4.5 release. If you have updated to 4.5.41, you may have noticed that there is not an update path to 4.6. So essentially, they found an issue with CoreOS versioning that made it incompatible. So so you see 4.6.38. So if you're on the fast channel, 4.6.38 is an eligible update target. And then later on, it'll either be late this week or early next week, 4.6.38 will move into stable. And then you'll have a stable update path, which comes basically a week to 2 weeks, hopefully before 4.8 goes GA and 4.5 is out of support.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're up, keeping your 4.5 cluster right at the edge of those 4.5 updates, just be aware that there's going to be a relatively short window where you'll need to update from 4.5 to 4.6 to keep fully within that support guideline. Let's see. Oh, what's next on my list? Oh, this is a fun one. So I don't know why I was doing this. I was searching for something inside of access.redhat.com inside the KCS, and I found this one. And this one is super exciting to me.
Yeah, the title alone is like super exciting. Please share the link.
Yeah. So I just posted it into the Twitch chat. So this KCS article effectively consolidates, as the name implies, a whole bunch of other KCS articles into one place. So
that is what I've been needing my whole life.
Yeah. Like, oh, you're having trouble, my UPI installation isn't going the way that I want it to. I don't know what's happening. And like, here's an entire, article about it. All the different things you can check and look at and test. And, you're having trouble with, OpenShift SDN. Okay, what are some things that I need to figure out inside of OpenShift SDN? So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know how we promote this one better inside of the KCS system, but this KCS is pretty awesome.
It's dope. Yeah, I need that.
So
I'm logging in to get it saved.
Mark that one
now. Yeah. For some reason, some of my extensions just went away all of a sudden. That's really weird.
You didn't need those.
Yeah,
That's
apparently
fine.
not.
It's fine.
The bookmarking one's still there, so that's what matters the most. Yeah, Red Hat docs save.
All right. So that's all I've got for this week.
Cool.
Yeah, for the top of mind. So let's move on to 4.8. As I said a couple of times now, 4.8 is not yet GA. Again, you would be forgiven for thinking otherwise with all of the noise we've made about it. But it will be GA very, very soon. All things, assuming all things continue to go well.
Right.
So the first thing that I want to talk about here is, actually, there's a couple of precursor things. So one, remember we did a stream on OpenShift 4.8 just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to go to youtube.com and I want to go to, not the base youtube.com, and I want to go to,
or OpenShift is the channel name.
Yeah.
Or username, I should
say. There we go. Yeah. So if you go to videos and then if you go to uploads and you go to past live streams, it's a simple way to see all of the stuff that we have here on OpenShift TV.
Yeah.
And if we look back somewhere inside of here,
authentication, authorization.
Yep, Real Workstation. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. It must have been because I was on PTO last week.
SSL certs.
Yep. Here's the what's new.
There it is. Yeah.
So yep, here's our what's new stream. I'll paste that into the chat here just for reference.
Dropped the link to the whole what's new webpage earlier. So yeah.
So yeah, we talked about a lot of this already. Maybe in slightly less detail with the product management team, as well as at that link that Chris just posted, we have all of the slides. So you can see the slide share that has all of those, etc.
That slide deck has over 2,500 views so far, last I checked. So
nice.
It has useful information in there, apparently.
So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about in the 4.8 release is that CoreOS is now based on RHEL 8.4.
Okay.
So a little known fact. So first of all, this page is open to the world. So this is the CI system that OpenShift uses. So you can come to this release status page and you can see kind of the status of all of the different releases and what's going on with them. And like you see, here's all the RCs, right? Here's all the 4.7s and so on and so forth. And I can click on one of these. So here's 4.8. And I can see all of the different information about it. This one's going to be relatively quiet because it's not substantially different from RC3.
Yeah.
And right, I can get just a ton of information about what's going on inside of each one of these releases. And this is updated nightly with every one of the nightly releases. So if you aren't familiar, anybody can go to cloud.redhat.com. You can use the pre-release access inside of there. You can get access. You can see there's already 4.9 that's being pushed into the nightlies. So the reason why I brought this one up is if we scroll all the way down here, you can see underneath components, Red Hat Enterprise Linux Core OS, and then it gives you this version string. I don't know what happens if I click on that. Oh, nothing. I get a bad page.
Oh,
strange.
Didn't resolve? Maybe on the VPN?
I'm guessing that's an internal site.
Yeah, must be. Oh, it's privileged in the URL. That's
yeah.
why. Yeah. That's,
so this release string or this name is meaningful. So if we break it out, the first two characters here, so this 4.8 represents OpenShift 4.8. The next two characters are the version of RHEL that it is based on. So 8.4. And then the last string, which you can probably see is a date string, and you might rightly guess is the time that this was built from. So a couple of interesting things here. So let's go back to like 4.7. We'll go with 4.7.18. As soon as I click. And this one doesn't have a CoreOS update associated with it. 4.7.17.
And I'm going to throw this in chat as the warning message that appears at the top of the page. The site is part of the OpenShift continuous delivery pipeline. Neither the builds linked here nor the upgrade paths tested are officially supported. So don't go pull down stuff from here and expect support.
Yes, this is informational, so you can get context around things that are happening.
Right.
So here we see with 4.7, we see it's based on 8.3. And we can see the build date that happened here. I can't click. There we go. So, and then we have the build date of June 3rd there. So RHEL 8.4, so updated kernel, updated drivers. I know there was at least one account team that reached out to me about, hey, this network adapter driver isn't available until RHEL 8.4 or 8.4. Right. Can we get it added in earlier? We want it in 4.6. Well, no, not easily. But hey, guess what? It's there now.
Yeah.
So one thing to note, I have heard rumor that 4.7 may rebase to RHEL 8.4 at some point in its future. So just be aware if you happen to see this 4.7.84 in the future, that means that it's rebased to RHEL 8.4.
Nice.
So be aware of that. And and so that's important because remember, it's the EUS releases that will stay. So OpenShift 4.6 is an EUS. So it will stay within the RHEL, which I think is RHEL 8.2 EUS release channel. So it wouldn't rebase as it goes forward. Whereas the other releases, the non-EUS releases, will keep up with what RHEL is doing. So I'm not going to go into all of the different changes that have happened in RHEL 8.4 and all
There's
of that
a lot.
stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a huge change log that's associated with that. You can go and check out all of the RHEL stuff and the RHEL CoreOS stuff that's related to that. At a minimum, be sure to check out the kernel version, make sure that you're not going to encounter any issues there, as well as if you're running OpenShift on bare metal, you may have some important driver changes that are happening there too.
Yes. So. And a little nudge for insights here. If you are using insights and you install a new version, it will look for the new problems that you might have. So that's a little nudge to just turn on insights, because maybe that kernel version doesn't quite work with your DB or something crazy like that, right? Like, who knows? So always good to have that oversight.
They're getting better and better about that all of the time. And a little bit of good news here in, is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks? We will have the insights folks here on the stream.
Yeah.
So we'll
talk about all things.
Yeah, because insights for OpenShift is relatively new, and I think it's as a consequence, it's relatively unknown. So
it is not new to the RHEL and like Ansible worlds. I mean, I remember talking about insights when I was on the Ansible team. So it's grown since I've first touched it a lot.
Yes, very much so. I mean, they have insights for Rev now, insights for OpenShift. RHEL has been 2 years at least now. So yeah, we'll get John Spinks on, and we'll have a good time talking about OpenShift or insights for OpenShift and all of the cool stuff that outputs.
Yeah, a question here about the compliance operator. Will it get any love in 4.8.z, specifically the OC plugin, which makes it much more straightforward to read the reports? That I don't know about.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either.
Because keep in mind, the operators are kind of built outside of the normal like release process. So we would have to actually talk to the PM that is doing the compliance operator.
So our Hope 9, if there is something, because I'm not sure what you're referring to with the reports there.
Right.
If you can send us an email, andrew.sullivan@redhat.com, with like details of what you're looking for there,
we will hunt it down.
Yeah, happy to hunt that down. Bring in the product manager for that, and then we can get a good answer for you for that. But yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't either. I wish I did, because compliance operator, while it being a little new, is near and dear to my heart.
Likewise.
Yeah. We'd like to make that easier for folks. So yeah, our Hope 9, please email and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is something that came up, and where's that link? So openshift.com/what's new. So if we go to the slides here,
look at you using speaker deck. I'm so glad we have it.
So if we jump ahead here, so one of the early things that we talked about was Sandbox containers.
Yes.
And Sandbox containers spawned a surprisingly large number of conversations internally.
Yeah.
And especially with confusion about Sandbox containers, which are based off of Kata containers, and OpenShift virtualization.
And we talked about if this isn't surprising to you because you do watch OpenShift TV religiously, we talked about this on Monday on the OpenShift Commons stream, but it's good that we're talking about it now here as well.
Yeah, and I don't know enough to go in depth, probably anywhere near as much as what they did on Monday. So if you are curious about far more than what Andrew's getting ready to say, definitely check out that stream on Monday.
I'm gonna grab the link right now.
Thank you. So the core thing that I want to communicate here and basically say is Sandbox containers, which is Kata containers, and OpenShift virtualization are fundamentally the same, but very different. So what do I mean by that? So Sandbox containers uses a hypervisor, KVM, to provide isolation between container instances. So it's effectively creating a very small virtual machine that is running the Linux kernel and then running the container on top of that. So it provides that strong isolation, strong kernel level separation between containers. It requires a physical server, right? Bare metal server with the virtualization extensions available, right? All that other stuff, basically until VT or VT, VD, whatever. But you need to have the hardware virtualization extensions available.
Yeah.
VTX. OpenShift virtualization is more like it's a it's a full virtual machine. Right. So I am just like I would with, Virtual Machine Manager or libvirt on my RHEL host or with Red Hat virtualization. Right. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use QEMU to instantiate an entire Linux or Windows based virtual machine inside of there. It has a whole operating system, all of the things that go alongside of it. A Sandbox container is basically just a kernel for running, an isolated kernel for running that container. OpenShift virtualization is a full virtual machine. They both require physical servers, bare metal. They both require virtualization, extensions, all that other stuff. So very different use cases. One is increased container isolation. The other one is virtual machine hosting. So hopefully that will eliminate some of the confusion. Please don't be afraid to, yes, thank you for posting that link. Adele, which if you have good eyes, you can see is the PM down here. So Adele can go into great amounts of detail. If you have questions, if there's still confusion, please don't hesitate to reach out. Either here in the stream chat, you can reach out via email, andrew.sullivan@redhat.com, and we'll be sure to address that. And I am hoping to have an entire show talking about this at some point in the future, because it's pretty cool technology. And there's definitely some interesting use cases associated with it. Let's see, go back to my cheat sheet here. So API graduations. This was a fun slide. I'm going to switch over. Should be in here. So API graduations. Vertical Pod Autoscaler is one that folks have been asking about for, I don't know, like 5 releases. Like it's so Vertical Pod Autoscaler is the inverse of horizontal pod autoscaler. Right. So the vertical pod autoscaler,
or the vertical one is harder than and this is why it's now.
So if you're not familiar, horizontal pod autoscaler basically says, there's I have 6 pods that are running that, they're all the same. Say it's an Apache pod. And when they reach 80% utilization, deploy some more instances of it, right? Yep. You've got a service or a load balancer in front of it. It's automatically sending traffic to all of those things. Vertical pod autoscaler is take the running instances and change them so that they go from, maybe 1 CPU or 1,000 millicores and 2 gigabytes of memory to 2,000 millicores and 2 gigabytes of memory. And so it will adjust the size of those pods according to the observations that it makes. So rather than increasing the quantity. So what does this actually look like?
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Good question.
Here we go. So this is the pre-GA documentation. I won't share the link to this, even though you can easily guess it if you can. It does have a password protection. But as soon as 4.8 goes GA, this will become fully available, and it should look exactly like this. So like many things in OpenShift, it is deployed and managed as an operator. So let's see, here's my 4.8 cluster. I'll take a slight detour here and notice if you haven't seen 4.8 before, they've added in some convenience features like here, getting started. It's a brand new cluster. So here's some things that you need to do to get started with your cluster. Here's a link to the documentation, and that goes to the day 2 configuration stuff. So they've added a bunch of new stuff in the GUI to make life just easier. So if we go to operators and operator hub and we do search for vertical, we have this vertical pod autoscaler. And I can hit install here, and I'll just go with the defaults, and we hit install. Interesting that the graphic is missing.
Oh, that is weird. Is that your browser doing that? Or?
It could be, I don't know. I don't know where those graphics even come from. I think
I thought they were part of the.
I think they're embedded in the CSV.
Yeah.
So
that's what I thought. Shows what we know.
Anyway, so that's going through and doing its thing. We'll move that over. So I've installed the vertical pod autoscaler operator. What we'll end up with is a couple of CRDs. So let me change my screen share.
Switching the guns.
I know. I'm going to share a region of the screen.
Ooh. You like to live dangerously.
Only on occasion. I just got to figure out how to change the size of it. There we go. The problem with doing this is it covers up the clock. So I have a harder time seeing.
Well, that's my job.
When we're approaching time.
You got 19 minutes, but we don't have anything at noon today. So you can go over if you want. Bonus Andrew time.
There we go. Man, using a mouse is hard sometimes.
Using my hands is hard sometimes.
All right. So let's switch back over here. So our vertical pod autoscaler is now installed. And the reason why I fiddled with the screen there is that I can easily bring this up. So OC get node. So we're connected to our cluster here, which is running Kubernetes 1.21, which means that we're running OpenShift 4.8. So literally, just as you saw before, I went to the mirror. I just pulled down the 4.8 binary and deployed using that. Remember that even though this says 4.8.0, it does not say RC or anything like that. It is not a GA version. So just keep that in mind.
Yes.
But you are welcome to, they're publicly
Near
accessible.
Future, but still future.
Yeah, I suspect much like, I think it was 4.7, 4.8.1 will be the first GA version. But if you want to go and test it out, deploy a new 4.8 cluster, pre-GA not supported, test it out, kick the tires, so to speak, by all means, go for it. So let's do OC API resources, and I want to grep without case sensitivity for vertical. And you can see that we have these now vertical pod autoscaler CRDs inside of here.
Nice.
I can do an OC get VPA, and there are none in this particular namespace or any namespace for that matter. And we also have the vertical pod autoscaler controller. So if I do...
Wait, did it just complain that it wasn't in the default namespace and then tell you it's in the default namespace?
No, it's
oh no,
so the namespace is the autoscaler, the name is default.
I'm backwards. Sorry, I have not had enough coffee today.
Default -n.
There you go.
And then we'll output that as YAML. So what this does, this controls, so the vertical pod autoscaler controller, among other things, specifies kind of the bare minimum. If you don't configure anything, if you don't specify in your vertical pod autoscaler, this is what it will do. So let's switch back to the documentation for a moment, now that I've covered that briefly, to talk about some of these objects. So first, the vertical pod autoscaler can only work with a certain set of objects, workload objects inside of OpenShift. So deployment, stateful set, job, daemon set, replica set, or replication controller. If you're just creating, plain pods, OC create pod, or you're defining specific pods, it won't work with that. It needs to be a deployment, replica set, whatever you happen to be using inside of there. So second, there are multiple modes that the operator or that the vertical pod autoscaler will work in. So you can see auto and recreate, initial, and then off, which provides only recommendations for the resource limits and requests. Initial, as the name suggests, will basically say when the pod is created, I will set some initial values, and then auto and recreate both will automatically apply recommendations. So what that means is if your pod is a single point of failure, if it is set to auto, it is going to say, hey, I need to bump up or bump down the resources associated with this pod. It will terminate it and then recreate it with the new resource settings. So if it is a single point of failure, it is going to experience some downtime. Yeah.
HPAs and VPAs are there for a reason.
It is going to be it won't go well. One thing to note, you cannot use the HPA and the VPA, the horizontal pod autoscaler, and the vertical pod autoscaler against the same resource set. So it is, it is one or the other. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If you're doing, the whole cloud native,
right,
blah, 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 if you already have, 3, 5, 10, 500, whatever instances of the pod out there, you're fine. If it's I have a deployment size of 1, and it is when that pod goes down, so too does the service. Well, that will cause interruptions if you're using the VPA and it resizes those.
Yes.
So we can see OC get VPA. We already looked at that. There isn't one inside of there. And then we can look at all of the different values that it's set inside of here. So what I want to try and do here is, I think I have an application. I haven't tested this yet, so it may go completely sideways and may not work at all.
That. We love that.
We'll see what happens. So I do have a replication controller running inside of here.
but it's very simple.
Yeah, it is. This is my, Andrew is not a developer. So this is my very simple app that just returns back like a simple JSON string. So what I want to do is create a VPA for a deployment of basically the same app. So I've got my vertical pod autoscaler defined here.
Mhm.
So it is going to, so the target reference, so what is it going to take action against? A deployment that has the name simple deployment. And I want it to have the update policy of auto. So let it do its thing.
Right.
So let's first create that. Now if I get my OC get VPA, do a -o YAML, you can see that it is looking for our application with an update policy of auto. Oops. So let's see what happens when we create our deployment. So very simple deployment here, as you can imagine by the name, right? All I want is 3 replicas, and then we're just using this this application image down here. So one thing to note, and the reason why I already have an existing RC here, so OC get pod. So let's do a OC describe on one of these existing ones. So you note that there are no requests, there are no limits defined here, right? If we look down here at the bottom, our QoS class is going to be set to best effort.
Okay.
So let's create our deployment. So we have our deployment here. It's doing its thing. We have our pods, which are now running. So now I want to do an OC describe on one of these pods. And what we should see, hopefully, I think, is, well, I thought we would see a set of resource limits and requests being associated with it. Provided false, mode auto. No pods matched, no pods matched. Huh. Maybe yeah, simple deployment. Yeah. I'll have to look at this. Is what I get for doing it without testing it, right?
Right.
Anyways, what should have happened there, and Andrew apparently fat fingered it, is it should, yeah, I'll figure out why in the interest of time, and follow up in the blog post.
There you go.
But what we expect it to do is essentially automatically assign the default values for requests and limits. Right. So that's why we looked at the, so if we did the, when we looked at this auto, so it should have done, why did it do that? It should have assigned a minimum of 25 millicores and 250 megabytes of memory to each one of those pods. Why it didn't do that, I don't know. Maybe it does it as an after action. Once it's deployed, then it will take action. So I'll look at it here in just a second. But yeah, I see 12 seconds. So maybe it is restarting these slowly.
Oh, well, yeah. But...
there we go. So it did work.
Yay, it just takes time.
Yeah, it just took it a little bit to actually take action against each one of those. So yeah, there we go. So it will automatically assign those resources over time. It will adjust those according to what the real utilization is, right, and what it thinks it has. There's a bunch of rules that go into this that are all in the documentation, as well as I will link to this. So inside of the Kubernetes vertical pod autoscaler GitHub repo, there is more information than you probably ever want to know about it. That's inside of here.
Yeah.
So lots of good information there about how it works, including this proportional, the limits being proportional. So basically how it creates both limits and requests and keeps them in proportion to each other. So that way you don't have one that's way out of whack, so to speak.
Keeps them consistent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, the API request count. This one I thought was really cool.
Can you limit that now finally?
I don't think you can limit. I don't know if you can limit it or not. But the interesting part to me was that this will tell you, if I can I get it wide enough? No.
There you go.
So we'll make it slightly smaller. Apologies if it's harder to read. Come on.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. So the interesting thing here is, so it tells us how many times each API in the cluster is being used. Maybe that's interesting. I don't find that particularly interesting myself, but this column is new. And this column is telling us, for example, in 1.22, this ingresses.v1 beta1.extensions API is going away.
That means it's being taken out of beta and put into
so
availability. Yes.
And I strongly suspect, I don't know for sure, but I strongly suspect that as time goes on with our releases, right? So as we get closer to 4.9, for example, we'll start including more of these APIs that will be deprecated, as we know. So that way you'll be able to look in the future and say, and I think the EUS use case is a great one of these. Hey, I'm using, OpenShift 4.6 EUS. Whatever the next EUS is, right, is going to be, 3, 4, 5, 6 versions of OpenShift ahead. How do I know which of my objects, my Kubernetes objects, I need to change or update or use a different API for?
Right.
Well, guess what? We'll have that ability, at least in 4.8 and later, where you can go and you can see, hey, I know that when I go to this next version, when I go to the next version, I need to, change all of these objects. So it's much easier. You no longer have to dig through release notes and all that other stuff. So I found that to be incredibly interesting and incredibly helpful.
Well, yeah, I mean, the release notes have gotten to the point now where it's like almost reading the dictionary for every Kubernetes release.
You don't regularly read the dictionary?
Not anymore.
Let's see. I'm going to move on again in the interest of time, because I wanted to talk about. Did I just skip it? No.
I don't know what you're looking for. You said ingress egress.
I'm looking for this one.
There we go.
So this one I think might have raised a lot of eyebrows. It certainly caught my attention. I'm an old virtualization admin.
Right.
And like in vSphere, we have things like network IO control, where I can go in and I can say, this 10 gigabit network adapter, I want to, reserve 3 gigabits for live migration traffic. I want to reserve 6 megabit or gigabits rather for iSCSI traffic. And I want to reserve 1 megabit or gigabit rather for management traffic. Right. I can divide up that. And on the surface, that is exactly what this looks like, right? It looks like I can go in and I can effectively take these adapters and I can divide up that bandwidth. I can provide guarantees and other things for ingress and egress traffic.
Wow.
So I struggled to find anything in the documentation about this. Yes, you saw I'm looking at this, pre-GA documentation, right? It has this big alert over here.
Right.
In case you didn't know, you can also go to GitHub.
Yeah.
So github.com/OpenShift, you can search for the docs here. And we'll go to OpenShift docs. And we have all these pull requests. So you can see all of the stuff that's going to be in the docs well ahead of time, including most of the time. So here, I'll pick on one of these and hope that it actually works. So most of the time you see this, there'll be a netlify bot when there's a PR associated with it. So you can go to the netlify or netlify or whatever it is.
Netlify.
Yeah. And you can see what those are going to look like. Right. So somewhere inside of here is whatever change was just included. I don't know what version of OpenShift this is related to. This is something 4.7 related. But you can find the PRs that are associated with a certain feature and then look for that netlify link, and you would be able to go in and browse those docs. So just a a little hint if you want to get early access or see what's happening in the docs. Anyways, my original point here was I couldn't find anything about this, like nothing.
Wow.
I actually went back to engineering and I asked them about it, and they shared with me an internal only, so I unfortunately cannot share it, document. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to copy and paste the example that they provided. So the way that this works is surprisingly straightforward. So I just want the YAML editor here. Close that. So I'm not actually creating a pod. I'm just using the YAML editor here as to show off or to show this this example machine config. So what they're doing here is using machine config to create a unit, right, a service that will effectively use the VSCTL to configure those QoS policies. So and this is, I just got this information less than 24 hours ago. So I am still digging into this and trying to find out what all is possible, what all is supported, right? And how we can take advantage of this in a number of different ways. Andrew's mind, again, old virtualization administrator, goes to things like, hey, can I have a set of network adapters that are used for, dedicated PV traffic, right? I'm using NFS, I'm using iSCSI, something like that. Can I guarantee an amount of bandwidth to those functions? So I wanted to bring this up basically to say, if you saw that, or if you see that in any of the materials, it might be a little bit different than you're expecting. I'm trying to track that down to ground truth, because I would really like to show off this feature and this capability and what all that we can do inside of there. So keep an eye out for it. I'll make sure if we do talk about it, it'll definitely be in the show notes. I may even have an entire stream dedicated to this, depending on how complex it is.
Yeah, I feel
and
like
what's going on.
It might be necessary.
So yeah, interesting stuff. I'm excited about it, even if it isn't. Machine config is not necessarily the most user-friendly way of going about it, but it's an incredibly powerful feature set. Okay, and I know we're at the top of the hour, but I'm going to cover one more thing, and that is CSI. So CSI has been in Kubernetes since 1.16, I think. I think 1.16 was when it went GA. 1.16, 1.17, somewhere in that time frame was when CSI went GA. So effectively there are, and CSI, Container Storage Interface, is the way that storage volumes are created and consumed by Kubernetes. And there are two ways of doing it. There is in-tree drivers and there is CSI drivers. So Kubernetes announced back about the same time that in-tree drivers were being deprecated and they would be removed in the future in favor of CSI drivers. So what we are seeing with 4.8 is the first work towards that within OpenShift. So if we scroll down here, we have this handy dandy table of supported CSI drivers inside of OpenShift. So from an OpenShift perspective, it's important to know a couple of things. So one, today we have a whole list of in-tree storage drivers that are supported and used by, basically every cluster. So I'll pick on VMware down here. If you deploy a vSphere, a VMware UPI or IPI cluster today, it will out of the box configure the in-tree storage provisioner, so that you have that thin storage class. You can right away go in and create a new PVC, the storage class thin, and it will create a VMDK on the underlying data store. In the future, we will use a VMware CSI driver. So that means that in-tree will be removed and CSI, a Red Hat VMware CSI provider, will be the default that we use at that point. Now, when Kubernetes, right, when the Kubernetes SIG, storage SIG and all of them did all of this, it was mandated that when you transition from in-tree to CSI, you have to have a migration path. So
makes sense.
Yeah. So when you do that, what you will see is your volumes will convert from in-tree to CSI volumes. That may or may not unlock some additional features. I don't have precise details there, but you can see at a minimum, CSI volumes often have additional features and functions available to them. So if it's converted, I don't know if those will be available, but definitely with a brand new one, it would be, right? Where you can do a resize of the volume if it's running, say, here, Azure.
Right.
So be aware, and I can dig up the, somewhere in here is the slide. I think we passed it a minute ago. Anyways, one of these slides in here, I'll find it.
Can you do a search? I feel like you could search in the deck.
I've already got it. I just realized I've already got it up. Yeah. It's slide 54 for the record.
Tab number 3000.
Yeah. So you can see all of these are in tech preview today, with the exception of GCE. So when 4.8 goes GA, you'll have tech preview for all of these. You can, if you want, you can enable the feature gate for tech preview no upgrade, and it will automatically switch over and it will begin using those. Like my cluster is deployed to Azure right now. I can enable that feature gate and it will automatically deploy the CSI driver and do all of that other stuff. And in the documentation, in the documentation here, if I go to CSI automatic migration, this is really important. Remember I said that it'll migrate from in-tree to CSI driver. The migration is automatic, but what that really means is the tooling is doing it for you. You can have it so that when it comes up with the CSI driver, it will automatically, like it'll look and see all of those in-tree volumes and it'll move them over. Or you can go through and you can basically say, I don't want you to automatically, right? So CSI migration AWS, right? You can say, deploy the CSI driver, but don't automatically migrate all of those volumes yet. Either I'll handle it or I need to do something or whatever that happens to be. So just be aware when I say automatic migration, yes, but no. So
it's really dependent.
Yep. So if we look down here, so vSphere CSI driver operator, remember this will be in tech preview in 4.8, but this will be, using the vSphere CSI driver inside of here in order to provision and consume storage resources. I don't know precisely what features will be available and what that feature matrix will look like. So if you're familiar with VMware CSI driver, and I know it's the most popular one, which is why I'm bringing it up. Let me find the right documentation page here. So if we come here to supported feature matrix for VMware CSI driver, right, you can see here like, oh, I need to be running, vSphere 7 U2 with, vSphere CSI driver release 2.2.1, right, to get, some of these features. Here, online volume expansion for block volumes, 2.2.0 to 2.2.1. I don't know how the Red Hat vSphere CSI volume driver will map over those features and versions and all that other stuff. I can only assume that we will fully document that when the time comes for it to go GA. But just be aware, it'll be a Red Hat CSI driver for each one of these, which means that it is deployed and supported and maintained by Red Hat. Whereas today, if you want to use the vSphere CSI driver, it is unfortunately not a certified one at this time, which means that it is, while it doesn't invalidate support with OpenShift, right? It is not supported by Red Hat. It is supported by VMware.
Right.
All right, we're 5 minutes over.
Everything's fine.
Yeah,
no,
it's.
I
know. I'm so used to having our hard stop at noon. So
no, I know it's probably jarring for you, but yeah, there's no hard stop today. So yeah, you can totally go over, man. It's fine.
Do we have any questions? I haven't
well,
looked at chat in the last couple of minutes. So
yeah, the one question we did get was, where can I learn more about OpenShift and so forth? So I dropped a bunch of resource links in there. You can also have free trials on the developer Sandbox. Let me change the little banner real quick so you can get back to that easily. No, really, yep. I wanted you to open the OBS window.
Did you, let's see, so Ranjan recently started exploring OpenShift. Do you have any learning videos for the installation and configuration of OpenShift? Yes,
that's the one I dropped all the links for. And then obviously our archive contains a bunch of resources.
Yeah, so
can we get a PDF of the presentation? It's already there.
Yeah, yeah, if you go here on speaker notes, if you click on the download button, wherever it is.
Yeah.
Here it is, download. You can see it automatically downloads a PDF.
Yep. So they're posted there for your downloading and edification of all things new in OpenShift.
So Ranjan, if you, and I see you dropped a few links inside of there. So I'll point out a couple of important ones, or ones that I like personally.
Yeah.
Now I lost my
that'd be
tab.
Great
so here, learn.openshift.com doesn't cover installing, but it covers basically every other aspect of OpenShift in some way. Again, I'll make a plug for this OpenShift Playgrounds link down here.
Yep.
So these are just generic OpenShift 4.7 in this case, right? I can click inside of here. I can hit that start and it drops me into a 4.7 environment. You notice I didn't have to log in. I didn't have to register. I didn't have to do anything. And I've got access to a cluster for, I think these last for an hour or so.
Yeah. 60 minutes.
Yeah. Like when we used to do in-person events, go to conferences and stuff like that. This is what I used to do demos. Yeah. They're amazing. And it's a great way to just, hey, I want to explore my cluster,
give me a fresh cluster. Let me use it.
Yeah. So, so you get pod. Oops.
And if you want to use the console, there's a link over there on the left-hand side to it in blue.
So it'll open up the console for this particular one. So yeah, a great way to just
full-featured kind of demo.
Yeah. Zero effort and have access to a cluster. The other one that I'll highlight, and I don't know how it's linked. So if we go to, there is depending on your infrastructure, we've done a bunch of videos. On installing OpenShift, including, and I'll include it in the show notes for this one. We did a couple of shows on installing to various platforms on this stream. I think one of the, I think my most popular video was an ad hoc stream we did on installing OpenShift to vSphere.
Yes. And I feel like we should maybe do another show similar to that, in the sense of we just try a different platform, right? Like kick the tires on something else.
And let's see what happens if I randomly DuckDuckGo for this. Oh yeah, there it is.
Oh, look at you. Damn, that was a year ago.
I know. Yeah. So actually, that's a good point. Chris, I had floated this idea briefly past you. I hadn't really done any checking with it, but doing a super mega stream, 6 or 8 hours or something of let's go through as many installs as we can.
The OKD team has done that before on channel, and it went incredibly well. So I would encourage that. Like maybe we pick a day. It'd probably be a Friday, just based off the current show schedule and show load, and we could just sit down and blow through all of them, taking breaks when we need to, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Actually, I'm looking for our,
just if you put,
there's a live stream.
If you put ask an OpenShift admin in front of it, that would probably help.
Is that what it is? Yeah,
I think so.
Anyways, I noticed that
pull your playlist, but yeah,
these are all like 5 minutes long. There's one that's like a 2-hour stream where we went through, but we did both UPI and IPI. And I think we did, because it was right when IPI was released. And I think we did both DHCP and static IPs even.
Right. No, we did a lot. Why can't
here we go.
Daggum playlist. You found it. Okay,
I found it. Yeah. Here I'll post that in there.
Thank you.
But yeah, this one we walked through. We did a bunch of stuff in this one. Look, that was back when I had COVID long hair and everything. It was before I moved offices.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was before I moved offices. Yes, it was.
So, all right. I think we'll go ahead and cut it off there at 11 minutes after the hour. So
perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Really, really appreciate your time today.
Yes.
If you have any questions, if there's anything we didn't address, any questions that occur to you between now and the next show, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So you can always contact me via email, andrew.sullivan@redhat.com. You can also reach me on social media, Twitter, Practical Andrew, just like you've seen me posting inside of the chat here. So it's literally Practical Andrew, no space, no dash, nothing like that, just one word. So you're always welcome to reach out that way, or either one of those methods at any time with any questions that you have.
Yeah, my DMs are open on Twitter, and you can always email short@redhat.com, and I'll get the right answers for you.
Yep, likewise. We are very happy to track those down and make new friends in the PM team.
Yes, it's always helpful.
Yeah, hopefully not enemies, just friends.
Just friends.
Yeah.
Only friends.
So I don't know. So I think we have a what's next presentation coming up. So what's new, which is the one that happened 2 weeks ago, is the new features in the next release. What's next is the roadmap presentation, and I believe that is coming up in another 2 weeks. Oh, next Thursday. So in a week.
In a week.
So be sure to put that on your calendar if you aren't aware. So you can go to OpenShift.tv. And there will be a link to the streaming calendar. Thank you. I knew you had a macro for that. That's why I brought it up. So you can always add those to your calendar, so that way you're aware of it. But I love that presentation, even though it always runs way over, because it gives us a really good idea of what OpenShift, what the product management, what the product team is thinking, and where they're going to be going with it. We will be live streaming it.
Insightful.
And both Chris and I, and probably a few others, will be here on the stream, so you can ask us questions. What does this mean? When will this be added? Why isn't this there? Did this get removed? Happy to help answer those. And we do take those questions and we send them directly to the product management team as well. So if you watch the what's next, there was a number of questions where that's exactly what we did. As they were presenting, we were asking your questions to product management and getting those answers for you. So
yep, it's awesome.
But yeah, anyways, have a great rest of your week, great rest of your day, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you. And one programming note, I mentioned on the last stream that we're going to be talking about rail troubleshooting today, this afternoon. I just got a text where you have to postpone that basically until the next Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents show. Life happens, folks. So this is it for today for streaming, it looks like. So enjoy your day and stay safe.